she's just evil. Like, there's nothing like her.
Why would she even tweet that? Like, don't you have
I think she just sits around in her evil lair whenever she runs out of Eye of Newt and small children to boil.
Hillary Clinton is one of the most disgusting human beings on the planet.
Very much so.
Always has been, always will be, and will be inserting clips on her response to Benghazi several times throughout the interview. I want to show who she is.
She's worth.
Hillary Clinton has been yanked back into the blazing spotlight once again. And this time, it's not politicians or reporters dragging her name out, it's Tyrus himself. Yes, the former wrestler turned fiery commentator has decided to rip the lid right off Hillary's closet of secrets. And what spills out isn't just a quiet collection of old bones. It's a full-blown circus act dancing in the open. This isn't some polite roast with a wink and a smile. It's an all-out demolition, hammering its way into the twisted corners of Hillary's past with the force of a steel chair crashing down in the middle of a wrestling ring. Every move Tyrus makes feels like a body slam straight into the myths and excuses she's built around herself, and the impact is impossible to ignore.
When she talks, you kind of get why Bill did what he did. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't, like, it's kind of like, again, I don't condone, cheating, but that's your morning.
Yeah.
You gotta kiss that before you go to bed at night, and then you gotta sleep with one eye open.
Yeah.
Because your buddy Epstein didn't off himself, and she has all this extra footage cut up in the closet. Like,
Hillary Clinton doesn't just walk into the American political spotlight. She struts onto that stage as if she already owns it. Her resume stretches on so endlessly it could pass for a CVS receipt. Yet somehow, she still can't convince the people that she's truly the one they want. Decades of influence, mountains of money, and a galaxy of connections should have made her unstoppable. But instead, her career stumbled again and again like a kid in gym class bragging about being the star athlete, only to trip over their shoelaces and miss the easiest layup of all time. It's almost unbelievable. All that power, all that polish, and yet the crowd never fully bought the performance.
We hear things that we find so fundamentally hard to believe. I mean, I'm in that category. People say things like, oh, that could never happen. But having been a close observer now for quite a number of years of our current president, you have to suspend your disbelief. And you have to do two things simultaneously. You have to both listen to what he says, because he often telegraphs what he's doing.
If you're enjoying this brutal takedown, don't forget to smash that subscribe button, because this story only gets wilder. This is the woman who somehow managed to turn losing to Donald Trump, yes, Donald Trump, into not just a defeat, but a Guinness World Record of public humiliation that echoes across generations. Imagine spending years polishing your image, mapping out your destiny, and cashing checks from Wall Street to Silicon Valley, only to trip face first into the electoral mud because you skipped Wisconsin. Yes, Wisconsin, the land of cheese, swing voters, and broken political dreams. Hillary treated it like some throwaway square on a Monopoly board. And when the dice landed, the whole board collapsed beneath her feet. The blunder wasn't just political. It was historic, a self-inflicted wound that defined her career forever.
They wanted us to believe it was a big naughty redhead that was going around, was going to ruin the world and do all kinds of bad things to us. Turns out the catfish was, hey, we don't boo here, but for this one time, you may boo.
And let's not brush past this, Hillary Clinton is the undisputed queen of contradictions. She paraded herself as the fearless champion of the working class, all while pocketing speech fees that cost more per minute than most families earn in an entire month. Nothing screams woman of the people like raking in $225,000 just to whisper sweet nothings to Goldman Sachs executives. It's the political equivalent of strolling into a backyard barbecue in a pantsuit stitched from caviar and insisting, "Relax, I totally understand your struggle." The image is outrageous, and the hypocrisy couldn't be louder, because while she posed as the voice of ordinary Americans, she was cashing checks that put her in a world far removed from the people she claimed to fight for.
Apology tour for lying to the American people and ruining 2 years of Trump's presidency and affecting elections with Russiagate, impeachment, and fake dossiers. Oh yeah, let's not forget the P-tape. Turns out it was the Democrats and the lefty media peeing down our backs and telling it was rain.
Her political instincts, if you can even call them instincts, have all the grace of a glitching GPS. The one that suddenly tells you to turn left straight into a river. And for a moment, you almost believe it, thinking maybe the machine knows something you don't. That's Hilary's career in a nutshell, blindly following the wrong turns from Iraq to healthcare reform, always managing to land on the wrong side of history. And when the fallout came, she didn't evolve, she pivoted late, like a student who skimmed the assignment at the last second, handing in an overdue essay and praying the teacher shows mercy. Her so-called evolution wasn't growth. It was desperation, a pattern of trailing the polls instead of leading the people. Every mistake became a reminder that her judgment was less about vision and more about survival. And survival alone doesn't inspire a nation.
He was the most unlikable candidate in the history of presidents, and that's saying a lot.
But Biden says the same thing.
He's number 2. When Biden says something, does anyone be like, oh?
Right.
No, they used to go, oh, when he...
Now let's dive into the emails. Oh yes, the endless saga of secrecy and servers that never seems to fade. Hilary's private setup was less secure than a teenager's abandoned Tumblr page, yet we were told it was just an innocent slip-up. This wasn't some harmless case of forgetting to lock a diary. This was the Secretary of State parking classified intelligence on a system a 12-year-old with a Hotmail account could have cracked. She turned the State Department into the equivalent of AOL dial-up and expected the world to just shrug it off. And then came Benghazi, the scandal that unleashed 1,000 hearings and transformed her into a political meme machine. She became infamous for sitting through marathon grillings with that dead-eyed smirk, as if sheer boredom could smother controversy. By 2016, her campaign wasn't strategy. It was malpractice. Democrats handed her the nomination like a family heirloom, ignoring the reality that enthusiasm for her ranked somewhere between lukewarm soup and expired yogurt. Her grand project of inevitability was laughable. Her unspoken slogan might as well have been, "Relax, I've got this." Spoiler alert, she didn't. Instead of winning over swing state voters, she wasted time polishing her victory playlist, and when the results came in, she looked stunned, as if democracy itself had betrayed her.
Dealing with the Hillary Clinton emails from a couple years ago saying how she should be in jail and all this other stuff. And it's just point to point to point to point exactly what just happened, proving once and for all it had absolutely nothing to do with Hillary Clinton's emails. It had everything to do with attacking Hillary Clinton, and these people are just so desperate for it that that's what they went for. And of course the hypocrisy is just out on stage for everybody to see.
And then came the excuses. Endless, exhausting excuses. Russia, Facebook memes, the FBI, Bernie Bros, sexism, James Comey, maybe even Putin's dog walker. Everyone and everything carried the blame, except the one person who actually ran the campaign. Hillary's loss wasn't some grand conspiracy. It was the universe finally serving the brutal reality check she had been dodging since the 1990s. This is the same woman who wasn't just picking out China patterns in the White House. She was sweeping up the shattered glass of Bill's scandals while trying to crown herself a political powerhouse. And in the middle of it all, she still managed to alienate half the women in America with that infamous jab. I suppose I could have stayed home and baked cookies. Nothing screams relatable like sneering at everyday life while standing in the White House kitchen. And let's not forget her disastrous Iraq war vote, a decision that aged about as well as a gallon of milk left out in the sun. When the fallout hit, she scrambled to backpedal, claiming she had been misled, right? Because when you're casting a vote that sends thousands of Americans into war, it's totally fine to skip reading the fine print.
But, you know, Tyrus, and this goes back to 2016, people were reluctant to talk to pollsters and say, I like Donald Trump. And now, fast forward 8 years later, essentially they're saying, if you like him, you're in a cult. Do you really want to be in a cult?
If the cult that Hillary doesn't like, yeah, sign me in. What do I need? Is it a red hat? I'll get one.
As Secretary of State, Hillary racked up miles like a travel addict, bragging about visiting over 100 countries as if her passport stamps were proof of genius. But let's be honest, shaking hands in airports doesn't make you a foreign policy mastermind. It makes you an overpriced tourist with a government jet. And then came her desperate attempts to connect with younger voters. Pure unintentional comedy. Who could ever forget the infamous "I carry hot sauce in my purse" stunt? It was political theater that felt less like authenticity and more like a clumsy audition for relevance. Watching Hillary campaign was like watching Windows 95 try to run TikTok, painfully outdated and never meant for the platform. Her speeches carried all the energy of a forced HR PowerPoint. Bullet point cadence, robotic hand gestures, perfectly rehearsed pauses, and canned smiles that never reached her eyes. Technically polished but emotionally hollow, she wanted to be the cool grandma winning hearts. But instead, she came off more like the stern librarian who finds you for whispering too loudly.
When the losing side, or someone, she's just a very unlikable person and will say anything to get this attention. But here's the thing, it's changed. America has changed. We no longer listen to that stuff. Now when they say it, we go, that's why I didn't vote for you.
What makes Hillary Clinton so fascinating is that she had every possible advantage lined up like dominoes waiting to fall in her favor. And still, she managed to trip over them. Name recognition? Check. A polished political machine? Check. Endless money, decades of experience, and a mountain of clout? All there. And yet she still slammed headfirst into the invisible wall of public mistrust. To the average voter, she didn't inspire. She calculated. Every move looked scripted. Every line sounded like it was pre-approved by a focus group. Instead of leading, she became a political algorithm, spitting out talking points like a robot programmed to fake authenticity. And then came the dynasty problem. Americans don't like the smell of monarchy. Just like the Bush family, the Clintons acted as if their last name alone was a golden ticket to power. But voters don't take kindly to being told their heir has already been chosen. So Hillary lingered like a restless ghost, haunting the Democratic Party, resurfacing just enough to remind everyone that she could have been president, and in her mind, should have been president. Her interviews drip with bitterness, as if the entire nation made the wrong choice and now owes her an apology. Newsflash: Americans don't send apology cards for elections.
Her logic makes no sense, but why would she say it? You know, I mean, we can't just keep saying TDS. It's something else. It is. I think these are I think they're ego damaged people.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't make any sense.
Look, she was going to be the first woman president.
Yes.
And who
Isn't
is
that the
she?
best?
If Hillary Clinton has one undeniable talent, it's survival. She clings to politics like a shadow that refuses to fade. Scandals, defeats, ridicule. She soaks them up like a political cockroach that simply refuses to die. Whitewater, Travelgate, Lewinsky, Benghazi, the infamous emails. Any single one of these could have buried another politician for good. Yet Hillary just kept marching forward with her chin held high, as if sheer persistence alone would eventually force the world to hand her the crown she's been chasing since the 1990s. Her legacy, however, is far from the triumph she envisioned. It's messy, complicated, and dripping with irony. She wanted to be the symbol of progress, the first woman president. But instead, she became the symbol of political disconnect, a walking cautionary tale of what happens when ambition steamrolls authenticity. And yet here we are, years later, still talking about her. Not because she inspires, but because she frustrates. She stands as living proof that political power without real connection is hollow, that entitlement is not a winning strategy, and that even the most carefully scripted campaigns can collapse when they forget the one thing that matters most: the people.
Woman should be in jail. Literally, Hillary Clinton should be behind bars. And so should the people who worked for her who did this. This is so blatantly corrupt. She wanted to distract from her email scandal. She cooked up a plan to accuse Trump of being a Russian agent in order to distract from her own legitimate scandal. She made up a scandal about Trump being a Russian.
Hillary Clinton dreamed of the history books hailing her as a trailblazer, the fighter who shattered the ultimate glass ceiling. Instead, she's remembered as the candidate who lost to Donald Trump, the living cautionary tale that proves inevitability is never enough to win. And maybe that's the cruelest twist of all. After decades of speeches, scandals, battles, ambition, and relentless calculation, her entire legacy boils down to one brutal punchline. She could have been president. She thought she should have been president, but she wasn't. And then, of course, there are the endless scandals. Whitewater, Travelgate, Filegate. If it ended with Gate, you can bet it circled her orbit like a dark cloud. The Clintons practically turned controversy into a family tradition, like a twisted reunion game of who can spark the juiciest scandal before dessert. Take Whitewater, that Arkansas real estate mess from the early years. Most Americans couldn't even explain it, and that's the point. When your financial dealings are so murky that even historians get migraines unpacking them, it's hardly the cleanest launchpad for a presidential run. It was like playing Monopoly and somehow landing not on Boardwalk, but in the middle of an FBI investigation.
Greatest achievement Trump ever did when they read the history books. It'll be like, maybe there'll be these wars will be solved in economy, but then there'll be a two-page spread on how he beat Hillary and how that will always be. He'll be on Mount Rushmore for that. They should do like called a Mount Trump, where they have the heads of the people he beat. So they've already got Hillary, and they got Kamala, and then maybe he can run again. You know, we still don't know, right?
One of his best lines ever was when he was first elected, and the people around him said, "We got to go for Hillary now. Lock her up, lock her up." And he said, "Nah, just let it go. She lost. She's going to have to live with that for the rest of."
And then there's the Clinton Foundation, advertised as a glowing beacon of global philanthropy. But underneath, it looked more like a political cash machine dressed up as charity. Sure, it sprinkled in some good deeds here and there, but those deeds came wrapped in sky-high speaking fees, fat donations, and cozy handshakes with world leaders who suddenly discovered their charitable spirit whenever Hillary's political influence was at its peak. Strangely enough, that generosity dried up almost overnight the moment her clout began to fade. Turns out, people weren't donating to save the world. They were donating to save their access to power. Who knew charity could double as a political vending machine? Insert check, receive favor, and let's not forget the Uranium One deal, a saga that sounded less like serious policy and more like the title of a cheap James Bond knockoff. The story: a Russian company gained control of uranium, and Hillary's State Department signed off. Conspiracy theories turned it into wild fiction, but even without them, the optics were a disaster. And her greatest weakness has always been her inability to read the room, like with the infamous basket of deplorables remark. Politically, it was the equivalent of screaming insults at half the dinner guests before asking them to pass the potatoes. In one neat soundbite, she insulted millions of voters, then acted shocked when they didn't line up behind her. Who could have guessed that calling people garbage isn't exactly a winning campaign strategy?
This sort of haggard old woman. I ran against her in 2006 for the Senate. She was riding high. She was going to be the first woman president. The world was at her feet, and now look at her.
Yeah, is that the greatest?
I mean, you don't even want to look at her.
Done. The greatest achievement Trump ever did when they read the history books. It'll be like, maybe there'll be these wars will be solved in economy, but then there'll be a two-page spread on how he beat Hillary and how that will always be. He'll be on Mount Rushmore.
The irony is that Hillary Clinton might have actually made a competent president, organized, detail-obsessed, and policy-savvy. But here's the truth. Competence alone doesn't win elections. Voters don't want someone who sounds like they're grading homework assignments every time they speak. They want a leader, not a bossy hall monitor with a pointer stick. Hillary craved the crown, but she never figured out how to truly win the kingdom. And in the end, her obsession with power became the very trap that unraveled her. Decades of climbing, scheming, and maneuvering all funneled into 2016, the coronation she believed was her destiny. But in a Shakespearean twist written by reality TV producers, it all collapsed in front of the entire world. Why? Because she couldn't connect with the very people she needed the most. Book tours, documentaries, and endless interviews since then have all carried the same undertone. I should have been president. It's turned into the world's longest acceptance speech for an award she never actually won. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party has struggled to move forward, but Hillary's shadow still lingers, like political glitter that refuses to vacuum out of the carpet, sticking around long after the party is over.
She is right that the kids on the subway aren't scared, though, but that's because they're in gangs.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, per Katie's point earlier, though, she is essentially, if you follow her logic, violent crime good, leave it alone.
That's great.
The bitter irony is that Hillary Clinton spent her entire career chasing history. And yes, she made history, but not in the way she dreamed. She became the first woman to come within striking distance of the presidency, but also the first nominee to lose to a man who wore scandals like merit badges. Instead of shattering the glass ceiling, she became the glass ceiling, tough, unyielding, and blocking everyone behind her from moving forward. That's her legacy. Brilliance tangled with blunders, ambition fused with arrogance, resilience wrapped in robotic coldness. She could have been the trailblazer who redefined politics, but instead, she became the cautionary tale of elitism gone wrong. She wanted the world to remember her as the woman who changed history. Instead, she's remembered as the one who proved inevitability is not a strategy, and entitlement is not a trait voters admire. Hilary dreamed of being unforgettable, and she is, but for all the wrong reasons. Her story stands as both a warning and a spectacle, a reminder that power without connection collapses under its own weight, no matter how polished the resume behind it.